The message arrived at midnight, broadcast on every frequency that human technology could receive. Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the command center of Pacific Fleet headquarters and watched the alien face fill the massive screen before him. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth that moved in ways human mouth could not. But the translation was clear enough. "People of Earth," the alien said, "I am High Chancellor Vorn of the Zilathi, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Confederacy. 12 species have united against you. Your expansion into territories beyond your small corner of space has been noted and judged. You have 48 hours to surrender all 17 of your colony worlds. You will withdraw to your home system and remain there permanently. If you refuse, we will remove you from the galaxy by force. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. The screen went dark dot around Morrison. Officers stood frozen at their stations. Some had gone pale. Others looked at him with desperate hope, waiting for him to tell them this was some kind of mistake. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan was the first to speak. "Sir, our intelligence reports show the Confederacy controls over 900 worlds. Their combined military strength is... We cannot fight them. Not conventionally." Morrison did not answer immediately. He was 63 years old. He had served in the fleet for 40 years. He had seen conflicts with pirates, border disputes with alien traders, and small skirmishes that never became wars. But this was different. This was extinction knocking on humanity's door. "Get me a secure line to the Defense Council," he said quietly, "and clear the room. Everyone below command rank, leave now." The junior officers filed out quickly. Only Sullivan and 3 senior commanders remained. When the heavy doors sealed shut, Morrison walked to a wall panel that looked like solid metal. He pressed his palm against it and spoke a phrase that Sullivan had never heard before. "Protocol Ember. Authorization Morrison, Jack Admiral 779. The wall slid open. Behind it was a small elevator that descended into darkness. "Sir?" Sullivan stepped forward. "What is Protocol Ember? I have never seen this in any briefing." Morrison looked at her with tired eyes. "You were not supposed to. Almost no one knows about this. Not the politicians, not the media, not even most of the admirals. Come with me. It is time you learned the truth about humanity's place in this galaxy." They descended for what felt like several minutes. When the elevator stopped, they stepped into a massive underground hangar that stretched farther than Sullivan could see. And filling that hangar were ships. Hundreds of ships. They were sleek and dark, built from materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their designs were unlike anything in the human fleet. "What is this?" Sullivan whispered. "This is what the Confederacy does not know about," Morrison said. "This is why we might survive." He led her past rows of vessels to a central platform where technicians in unmarked uniforms worked at glowing consoles. The technology here was advanced beyond anything Sullivan had studied in the academy. It looked alien, yet the humans operating it seemed completely comfortable. 48 hours, Morrison said. "They gave us 48 hours because they think we are primitive. They have watched us for decades and seen only what we wanted them to see. Our public fleet, our visible colonies, our broadcast technology. They think they know what humanity can do." He stopped at a large display showing a map of human-controlled space. 17 colonies marked in blue. Earth at the center. And then he pressed a button and the map changed. Hidden stations appeared. Secret shipyards. Supply lines that no enemy had ever detected. "They never learned who forged our arsenal," Morrison said. "And that is going to be their greatest mistake." Sullivan stared at the map. "Sir, how is this possible? This level of construction, This technology, it would take centuries to develop. We have only been a spacefaring species for 200 years. Morrison smiled, but there was no humor in it. We had help. Not military help. Something better. We had teachers. Before Sullivan could ask more questions, an alarm sounded. One of the technicians called out, "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission. Private channel." "It is them," Morrison nodded. "Put it through." The display changed to show a symbol that Sullivan did not recognize. It was elegant and ancient, a spiral wrapped around a single point of light. Then a voice came through, speaking in perfect English with a tone that felt both warm and impossibly old. "Admiral Morrison, we have seen the Confederacy's declaration. The time has come for your species to reveal what you have become. We will not fight beside you. That was never our agreement. But we have given you everything you need. The choice of how to use it belongs to humanity alone." The transmission ended as quickly as it began. Sullivan looked at Morrison. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Who was that? Who are they?" Morrison turned to face her fully. "They call themselves the Architects. 10,000 years ago, they guided young species across this galaxy. Taught them, helped them grow. Then they disappeared. Everyone thought they were extinct. But they were not dead. They were waiting, watching, looking for a species worthy of their final lesson." He gestured at the ships around them, at the technology that hummed with quiet power. 250 years ago, they found us, and they have been teaching us ever since. Not how to conquer, not how to destroy. They taught us how to protect ourselves, how to build things that others cannot break, how to survive. Sullivan felt the weight of this knowledge settle onto her shoulders. The Confederacy has no idea. "No," Morrison agreed. "They see a young species that spread too fast. They see easy prey. They have declared war on humanity without understanding what we truly are." He began walking toward the nearest ship, his boots echoing in the vast hangar. "In 48 hours, they will learn. And the galaxy will never see us the same way again." Sullivan followed him. She did not know what the coming days would bring. She did not know if humanity would survive. But for the first time since that alien face had appeared on the screen, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The year was 2089. Dr. Ben Carter sat in a small research vessel at the edge of the solar system, staring at something that should not exist. The structure floated in the darkness, between stars, ancient and silent. It was not built by human hands. The metal was wrong. The angles were wrong. Everything about it whispered of intelligence far older than Earth itself. "Are we sure about this?" asked his colleague, a young engineer named Paula Vance. Ben checked his instruments for the 100th time. "The signals are coming from inside. Someone, or something, wants us to enter." They docked carefully. The airlock opened without resistance, as if the station had been waiting for visitors. Inside, the corridors glowed with soft blue light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air was breathable. The temperature was comfortable. Everything had been prepared. At the center of the station, they found a chamber filled with floating symbols and holographic displays. And standing among them was a figure unlike anything Ben had ever imagined. It was tall and slender, with skin like polished silver and eyes that held the depth of galaxies. It did not speak with its mouth. Its voice simply appeared in their minds, gentle and curious. "You came," it said. "We sent the signal many times before. Other species found us. They demanded weapons. They demanded power. They wanted to know how to destroy their enemies." Ben swallowed hard. His scientific mind was screaming that this was impossible, but his heart told him to listen. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "Nothing. We sent them away. They were not ready. The being moved closer, studying Ben with ancient eyes. But you are different. Your probe carried no weapons. Your message asked no demands. You simply said, "We want to understand. Tell us what this place is. Tell us who built it. Teach us." Paula gripped Ben's arm. "What are you?" "We are the architects. Long ago, we helped young species grow. We taught them science, art, philosophy. But many used our gifts for war. They destroyed themselves and others. So we retreated. We hid. We watched. We waited for a species that wanted knowledge for its own sake." Ben felt his pulse racing. "And you think that is us? Humanity? We do not know yet. But you asked the right question. That is a beginning." The memory faded. 250 years later, Commander Sam Ortiz stood on the bridge of the stealth carrier Nightfall and thought about that first meeting. He had read the classified files. He knew how Dr. Carter had returned to Earth and shared what he learned with a small group of leaders. He knew how the architects had slowly, carefully begun teaching humanity the secrets of the universe. They did not give humans weapons. They gave them understanding. They explained how energy truly worked, how matter could be shaped at the atomic level, how space itself could be bent and folded. Human scientists took decades to grasp even the basics. But they learned. And with that learning, they built. The Nightfall was one of 200 ships in the secret fleet. It measured half a kilometer long, yet it could move through space without creating any detectable signature. Its hull was made from materials that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Its engines bent physics in ways that other species had never discovered. "Commander," said his tactical officer, a sharp woman named Rosa Mendez, "we have received orders from Admiral Morrison. The fleet is to move to Kepler 442. The Confederacy is sending ships to attack the colony." Sam nodded slowly. "How many enemy vessels?" 800 confirmed. Possibly more on the way. 800 ships against their 200. Any other commander would have called those impossible odds. But Sam had seen what these ships could do in testing. He had watched their weapons disable targets without destroying them. He had felt the Nightfall slip through sensor nets like a ghost through walls. "Set course for Kepler 442. Tell the fleet to maintain stealth protocols until my command." As the ship hummed to life around him, Sam thought about the architects again. They had never asked for anything in return for their teaching. They had never demanded loyalty or worship. When human leaders asked why they were helping, the architects gave a simple answer. "Because you did not ask us for the power to hurt others. You asked us for the power to understand. That is rare. That is precious. That is worth protecting." Now the galaxy was about to learn what humanity had become under their guidance. The Confederacy expected to find frightened colonists and outdated ships. They expected easy victory and quick surrender. They had no idea that every human world was protected by technology centuries ahead of their own. Sam opened the channel to his crew. "Listen carefully. In a few hours, we will reveal ourselves to enemies who believe we are helpless. We will show them that humanity is not what they think. But remember why we fight. The architects taught us to protect, not to conquer. We will disable their ships. We will spare their crews. We will win this battle without becoming the monsters they believe us to be." He paused, looking at the stars through the viewport. The galaxy declared war on us because they thought we were weak. They never learned who taught us. They never understood what we were taught. Today, they begin to learn. The fleet moved in silence through the darkness of space. 200 ships carrying the legacy of the architects. 200 ships built not for empire, but for survival. 200 ships that would change everything the galaxy believed about the small species from the small planet called Earth. In his quarters, Sam kept a copy of Dr. Ben Carter's original report. The last line always stayed with him. They asked me what I wanted. I told them I wanted to understand. And they smiled. If beings like them can smile, and they said, then we will teach you. Because understanding is the beginning of everything worth building. Sam closed the file and prepared for battle. The Confederacy had started this war. Humanity, with the quiet help of teachers older than most stars, would finish it. Captain Grace Nolan stood on the observation deck of Kepler 442's main colony and watched death arrive in the sky. The Confederate fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of metal insects, blotting out the stars. 800 warships, 800 engines of destruction sent to crush a world of 12 million people. All civilians are moving to the underground shelters, reported her aide, a nervous young officer named Tony Park. But Captain, we only have 30 defense ships. We cannot hold them for more than a few minutes. Grace knew the math. She had known it since the war declaration reached them 2 days ago. Her small fleet was built for patrol duty, not war. Against 800 enemy vessels, they would be dust in moments. But she also knew about Protocol Ember. She knew help was coming. She just had to buy time. Open a channel to the Confederate flagship, she ordered. The screen flickered and Admiral Threx of the Verati appeared. He was reptilian, with scales the color of dried blood and teeth that showed when he spoke. His species was known for brutality in combat. They took no prisoners and showed no mercy. Human commander, Threx said with obvious contempt. You have seen our fleet. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick. Resist, and we will burn your city slowly, one by one, while your people watch. Grace kept her voice steady. Admiral, I am required to inform you that attacking this colony would be a mistake. I am asking you, one officer to another, to reconsider. Threx laughed. It was an ugly sound. A mistake? You have 30 ships. I have 800. Your species has no allies, no advanced technology, no hope. The Confederacy has studied you for decades. We know exactly what you can and cannot do. Do you? Grace asked quietly. Threx's laughter faded. Something in her tone bothered him, but he pushed the feeling aside. Enough talk. You have 5 minutes to surrender. After that, we attack. The screen went dark. Grace turned to Tony. Status of civilian evacuation? 80% complete. Another 20 minutes and everyone will be underground. We need to give them that time. Grace walked to the tactical display. Her 30 ships were arranged in a defensive formation around the colony. They would fight. They would die. But every second they bought was another family reaching safety. Captain, Tony said suddenly, I am detecting something strange. There are energy readings behind the Confederate fleet, but our sensors show nothing there. Grace allowed herself a small smile. That is because what is there does not want to be seen. Not yet. In space, Commander Sam Ortiz watched the Confederate formation through the Nightfall's advanced sensors. His 200 ships held position in perfect stealth, invisible to every scanner the enemy possessed. They had arrived an hour ago and waited in silence. Commander, Rosa Mendez reported, Captain Nolan's fleet is preparing to engage. She's buying time for the evacuation. Brave woman, Sam murmured. Let us make sure her bravery is not wasted. Signal the fleet. On my mark, we decloak and engage. Remember our rules. Disable, do not destroy. We want prisoners, not corpses. Yes, Commander. The Confederate attack began. Admiral Threx ordered his ships forward in an overwhelming wave. The first missiles launched toward Kepler 442. Grace Nolan's tiny fleet moved to intercept. Knowing they were about to die, and space itself seemed to tear open. 200 ships appeared from nothing. materializing directly behind the Confederate formation. They were black as void, sleek as predators, and they moved with impossible speed. The fourth Rex could even issue orders. Beams of pale blue light swept across his rearguard. The beams did not explode. They did not burn. Instead, every ship they touched simply stopped. Engines died. Weapons went offline. Lights flickered and faded. Hundreds of Confederate vessels became drifting hulks in seconds, their crews alive but helpless. What is happening? Threx screamed at his officers. Where did those ships come from? Why are our sensors not detecting them? No one had answers. The human ships danced through the Confederate fleet like ghosts, striking and vanishing and striking again. They could not be targeted. They could not be tracked. Every weapon the Confederacy fired hit empty space. On the colony surface, Corporal Danny Webb had been helping families reach the shelters when the sky changed. He was 22 years old, barely a year out of training. He had expected to die today. Instead, he stood in the open and watched the impossible happen. The dark human ships carved through the enemy like wind through smoke. Every few seconds, another Confederate vessel went dark. Danny counted dozens, then hundreds. The invaders who had come to destroy his home were being picked apart by protectors he never knew existed. What are those ships? Whispered an old woman beside him, clutching her grandchildren close. Danny shook his head. I do not know. But they are ours. In less than 20 minutes, it was over. 300 Confederate ships drifted powerless in space. The rest, including Admiral Threx's flagship, fled in chaos and terror. They had come expecting to slaughter helpless colonists. They left with a third of their fleet disabled and their confidence shattered. Captain Grace Nolan opened a channel to the retreating enemy. Admiral Threx, please deliver a message to High Chancellor Vorn. Tell him that Kepler 442 is defended. Tell him that every human world is defended. And tell him that if the Confederacy wants war, they should first learn who they are fighting. There was no response. The Confederate ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, running from a battle they had expected to win easily. Sam Ortiz guided the Nightfall alongside Grace's battered patrol ship. Captain Nolan, well done. Your courage gave us the time we needed. Grace let out a breath she felt she had been holding for hours. Commander, I have so many questions. I know, and you will have answers. But for now, know this. Humanity is not alone. We never were. And the galaxy is about to discover that the species they tried to destroy is far more than they ever imagined. On the surface of Kepler 442, Danny Webb watched the dark ships take formation above his world like silent guardians. He did not know their names. He did not know where they came from. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humanity had protectors. And those protectors had just announced themselves to the galaxy. The footage spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Ships appearing from nowhere. Weapons that disabled without killing. 300 Confederate vessels neutralized in minutes by a species everyone had considered primitive. Within hours, every inhabited world in known space had seen the Battle of Kepler 442, and everything the galaxy believed about humanity changed. Ambassador Lisa Morgan sat in a small diplomatic station on neutral ground, a moon orbiting a gas giant far from any homeworld. Across the table from her were representatives from 3 species that had quietly withdrawn from the Confederacy in the days following the battle. They were afraid. She could see it in the way they held themselves, in the nervous movements of their eyes and limbs. We did not want this war, said the Pelori ambassador, a being that resembled a tall insect with wings folded against its back. Our leaders joined the Confederacy because they promised easy victory. They said humans were weak. They said it would be over quickly. Lisa nodded calmly. And now you know that was a lie. We know that we were deceived. Not by the Confederacy, but by our own assumptions. The ambassador's voice carried shame. We looked at your species and saw only what you showed us. We never imagined you were hiding such power. We were not hiding power, Lisa said carefully. We were hiding protection. There is a difference. The Marindal representative leaned forward. His species was aquatic, and he spoke through a translation device attached to his water-filled suit. The ships at Kepler 442 used weapons we have never seen. They disabled our allies without killing them. Why? If you have such technology, why show mercy? Lisa had expected this question. She had spent her whole career preparing for a moment like this. Because we were taught by teachers who valued life above conquest. The ones who gave us this technology did so because we asked for knowledge, not weapons. They showed us how to protect ourselves without becoming destroyers. That is not weakness. That is strength. The ambassadors exchanged glances. The third representative, a being from a species Lisa did not recognize, spoke for the first time. There are rumors spreading, old stories being remembered, tales of an ancient race that once guided younger species. The architects. Many believed they were myths. Lisa said nothing. She did not confirm or deny, but her silence spoke volumes. Far across the galaxy. In a great library on a world devoted to knowledge, Scholar Yeneth of the Meridani pulled ancient records from archives that had not been opened in centuries. She was old for her kind, with gray patches spreading across her blue skin, but her mind remained sharp. And what she was finding terrified her. The architects were real. 10,000 years ago, they had walked among the young species of the galaxy. They had taught and guided and helped civilizations grow. But then they had vanished. Most believed they died out or left for another galaxy entirely. But the oldest records suggested something else. They did not leave, Yeneth whispered to herself. They hid. They waited. They were looking for something. She found a passage written by a scholar from a species that no longer existed. The translation was difficult, but the meaning was clear. The architects grew weary of war. Every species they taught eventually used their gifts for destruction. So they retreated to the edges of the galaxy and watched. They said they would return only when they found a species worthy of their final teaching. A species that wanted to understand rather than dominate. A species that protected the weak instead of preying upon them. Yeneth's hands trembled. The humans. The architects had found the humans. She immediately sent a message to High Chancellor Vorn. She begged him to stop the war. She explained what she had found, what it meant, why attacking humanity was the greatest mistake the Confederacy could make. The architects had chosen their final students, and those students had just demonstrated what they had learned. Vorn's response came within the hour. He dismissed her findings as superstition. He called her a coward and a fool. The losses at Kepler 442 were a trick, he insisted. Human technology could be overcome with greater numbers. He was committing the full military strength of the Confederacy to a direct assault on Earth itself. Yeneth read his message and felt despair settle into her hearts. The Chancellor was going to doom them all. On Earth, General Chris Palmer coordinated ground defense preparations that he hoped would never be needed. The orbital platforms were armed and ready. The secret fleet had returned from Kepler 442 and taken position throughout the solar system. Every human world was now protected by technology that the Confederacy could not match. But Palmer was a soldier. He knew that desperate enemies did desperate things. And Vorn was clearly desperate. General, an aide reported. Long-range sensors show the Confederate fleet assembling at their staging point. Current count is over 4,000 ships. Palmer closed his eyes. 4,000. the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. All aimed at Earth. Does Admiral Morrison know? Yes, sir. He is preparing the fleet for engagement. Palmer nodded slowly. He had read the old files. He knew about the architects and their gifts. He also knew their rules. They had given humanity the tools to defend itself, but they would not fight alongside them. This was humanity's test. Their choice. Their moment. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on his private channel. He opened it and found a simple text with no sender identification. We gave you the tools. The choice of how to use them was always yours. Choose wisely. The galaxy is watching. Palmer forwarded the message to Admiral Morrison without comment. Then he returned to his preparations. In a few days, the largest battle in human history would begin. 4,000 enemy ships against 200 human vessels and whatever defenses Earth could muster. The numbers were still against them. But numbers had been against them at Kepler 442 as well. Palmer allowed himself a grim smile. The Confederacy thought they were bringing overwhelming force against a cornered animal. They still did not understand. Humanity was not cornered. Humanity had been waiting. And when the enemy arrived at Earth, they would finally learn the full truth of what the quiet forgers had created. 4,000 ships filled the darkness above Mars. High Chancellor Vorn stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at Earth in the distance, a small blue dot that had caused him so much trouble. Today, that trouble would end. Today, humanity would learn that defiance had consequences. All fleets report ready, his tactical officer announced. We await your command, Chancellor. Vorn allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. After the embarrassment at Kepler 442, he had gathered every warship the Confederacy could spare. This was the largest military force in galactic history. Whatever tricks the humans had used before would not save them now. A communication request appeared on his console. Human origin. Chancellor Vorn. Admiral Morrison's face filled the screen. He looked calm, almost peaceful. I am required to offer you one final chance to withdraw. Turn your fleet around. Return to your space. Let us discuss peace as equals. No more lives need to be lost. Vorn laughed. You destroyed 300 of my ships, and you speak of peace? Humans are arrogant, as well as deceptive. But your arrogance ends today. 4,000 ships, Admiral. Your little tricks cannot stop 4,000 ships. You are right, Morrison said quietly. Tricks cannot, but understanding can. I truly am sorry for what is about to happen. The transmission ended. Vorn sneered and gave the order to attack. The Confederate fleet surged forward. Thousands of engines blazed as the greatest armada ever assembled moved toward Earth. Weapons charged. Target locks engaged. In minutes, they would be in range to begin the bombardment that would end human civilization forever. Then the human fleet appeared. 200 dark ships materialized. In perfect formation between the Confederacy and Earth, they looked small against the endless sea of enemy vessels. 200 against 4,000. Impossible odds. Open fire, Vorn commanded. Destroy them all. Thousands of weapons discharged at once. The space between the fleets filled with missiles, energy beams, and projectiles of every kind. It was enough firepower to crack a planet. Nothing could survive such an assault, but the human ships did not try to survive it. They moved. They moved in ways that violated everything the Confederacy understood about physics. They slipped between missiles. They bent around energy beams. They danced through the storm of destruction as if it were gentle rain. And they struck back. Pilot Amy Thorne led her squadron through the chaos with fierce joy in her heart. Her fighter was small even compared to the secret fleet vessels, but it carried the same architect-taught technology. She twisted past a Confederate cruiser and fired her disabling beam. The massive ship went dark and began to drift. "Squadron 7, focus on protecting the civilian transports," she ordered. "Nothing gets past us." Behind the battle lines, evacuation ships carried colonists from the orbital stations to safety on Earth's surface. The Confederacy had targeted them first, hoping to cause panic and despair. They did not reach a single transport. Amy and her pilot saw to that dot as the battle raged. Something unexpected happened. On the bridge of Admiral Morrison's flagship, a figure appeared. It had not walked through any door. It had not transported aboard. It was simply there, as if it had always been there and everyone had just noticed. Elder Kalen was tall and silver, ancient beyond measure, with eyes that held the light of dying stars. The last active architect, the final teacher. They had come to witness humanity's choice. "Open a channel," Kalen said. Their voice echoed not just through the flagship, but through every ship in both fleets. "I wish to speak." The battle paused. Fighters held their fire. Warships stopped advancing. Every screen in the Confederate fleet showed the same impossible image: an architect, living and real, standing beside a human admiral. "I am called Kalen," the ancient being said. 10,000 years ago, my people taught the young species of this galaxy. We gave them knowledge. We shared our understanding. And they used our gifts to make war upon each other. Species after species chose destruction over wisdom. So we withdrew. We hid ourselves away and watched, waiting for someone different. Vaughn stared at his screen in disbelief. The myths were true. The architects were real. And they had allied with humanity. 250 years ago, a small human vessel found our hiding place. The beings aboard did not demand weapons. They did not ask for power over their enemies. They asked only to understand. They wanted to learn. Callan's voice carried infinite sadness and infinite hope. In 10,000 years of watching, no species had ever asked us that question. So we answered. We taught them. The architect gestured at the human fleet, at the dark ships that had disabled hundreds of Confederate vessels without killing their crews. We did not give them weapons of destruction. We gave them tools of protection. Shields to guard their homes. Beams to disable without death. Engines to escape rather than conquer. Because when we asked them what they wanted, they said, "We want to keep our people safe. We want to protect the ones who cannot protect themselves." Kalen turned to face Vaughn directly through the screen. "That is why we chose humanity. Not because they were strong. Not because they were clever. Because in all the species we have ever encountered, they were the only ones who consistently chose protection over power. They defend the weak. They shelter the helpless. Even now in this battle, they are not trying to destroy you. They are trying to stop you without slaughter. Look at your disabled ships. Your crews are alive. Your people are safe. Is that the action of monsters?" The Confederate fleet hung motionless in space. On hundreds of bridges, officers looked at each other with new uncertainty. The humans could have killed them all. They had the technology. They had the opportunity. But they had chosen mercy instead. Admiral Morrison stepped forward to stand beside Kalen. "Chancellor Vaughn, the architects will not fight for us. They never have. This battle, this choice, is ours alone. But I am asking you to understand what they are telling you. We do not want to be your enemies. We never did. Surrender your fleet. Go home. Let us build something better than war." For a long moment, silence held the galaxy in its grip. Then, one by one, Confederate ships began lowering their weapons. Captains who had seen the truth in Kalen's words, who had watched human pilots protect evacuation ships instead of pressing attacks, who had realized they were not fighting monsters but protectors, chose peace Vorn screamed orders to continue the assault, but his own officers refused. His own crew would not obey. When he tried to override them and launch his flagship at Earth in a suicide run, his tactical officer stunned him with a sidearm. "Enough," the officer said quietly. "Enough death. Enough war. They beat us without killing us. The least we can do is return the favor." The Battle of Earth ended not with apocalyptic destruction, but with quiet surrender. 4,000 ships became 4,000 witnesses to humanity's choice. They had come to conquer and found themselves spared. In the weeks that followed, the Galactic Confederacy dissolved. New treaties were written. Human ambassadors were welcomed on worlds that had once demanded their extinction. And everywhere, the story spread of the architect's final students, the species that chose protection over conquest, mercy over massacre. Elder Kalen visited Admiral Morrison one last time before departing. "Our work is done," the architect said. "You no longer need teachers. You have become what we always hoped to find, a species worthy of the stars. Not because of your power, but because of how you use it." Morrison watched the ancient being fade away like morning mist. "Will we ever see you again?" Callan's voice lingered even as their form vanished. "Perhaps in another 10,000 years, when the students you teach are ready to teach others." And then they were gone. Morrison stood alone on his bridge, looking at the stars. The galaxy had declared war on humanity. They had never learned who forged humanity's arsenal quietly in the darkness. But now they knew something more important. They knew what humanity had been forged into. And that, Morrison realized, was the true gift of the architects. Not weapons, not technology, but the wisdom to protect without becoming destroyers. Humanity had passed the test. The quiet forge had done its work, and the galaxy would never be the same.